Hey everyone, and welcome to one more episode of About Protecting Wildlife. And today I have Clayton Pilbro. I hope I say your name correctly. Welcome, my friend.
Hello, Tanja.
So nice to see you again.
It's nice to see you as well.
Thank you. So today we'll talk about the II conservation, the conservation of the II. Do I say II correctly?
That's correct.
Exactly. That's the small teddy bear there. And that is a very interesting animals that's living on Madagascar. And Clayton will share a little bit more about what is this species II, and a very amazing story of the interview around the conservation on Madagascar. Please share a little bit about who you are.
As you said, my name is Clayton Pilbro. I am the founder and manager of II Conservation. I'm a primatologist. I created and run II Conservation to help IIs, an extremely endangered Malagasy nocturnal lemur species. It's the only nocturnal lemur species. I got my Bachelor of Science in Biological and Forensic Anthropology and Paleontology and Geology at the University of New Mexico, and my Master's of Science from Western Michigan University, and work from the New Mexico, Yale, American Museum, and Field Museum on Plesiadapiforms, which are a stem-proto-primate from the Paleocene and Eocene of the United States and Germany. I also spent a decade conducting autopsies and working on crime scenes and conducting organ and tissue donation for the medical investigator and donor services. So a completely different side of my life.
It's like woo!
Yep.
That's an interesting thing.
I wasn't specifically interested in IIs until I taught at Western Michigan. Several of my students were interested in them, and I realized that IIs were a mix of derived and basal characteristics. The basal traits were similar to my fossil stem primates, the Plesiadapiforms, and the derived traits were highly unique. So IIs are the stem branch of all lemurs genetically. And that means that all other lemurs evolved from the IIs, which I just thought was completely interesting. And that's what got me interested in the IIs.
That is crazy. So a little bit more about, thank you for sharing about, how did you start the II conservation? Because you are the founder of the conservation of the II, correct?
I'm one of the first who has specifically made an organization just to protect the II. Now, Dr. Edward Lewis has been probably the front runner to really protect the II specifically. He started Madagascar Biodiversity Partnership, and he has been working with II since the late 90s, early 2000s in Madagascar on the ground. He and Dr. George Perry did some wonderful genetic research in 2012 and 2013 on the IIs. They tagged and ran the blood of many wild IIs, and they found that the northern IIs and the eastern and western IIs are becoming genetically distinct from one another because the forests in Madagascar are so spotty because of deforestation that the IIs can't get to one another from separate parts of the island. And so the northern branch of the II are becoming so distinct from the other II that at some point they may become unable to breed with one another. And there's only 5,000 II left in the wild. And that's such a small amount of II left that if they aren't able to breed with that small of a number, their chances of survival are even less. And that helped in 2014 get them their endangered status, because before that they weren't an endangered species.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
And so why they cannot like get together is because they have cut the forest down and build like houses or just like
Exactly.
they're clear.
So now they have to cross human settlements to try to get from one spotty part of the forest to
Yeah.
another. And that leads them into crossing humans areas. And we'll get into this further with the rest of the talk.
Yeah.
But humans don't like eyes very much in
No.
Madagascar, and it leads to them being
we'll come to that.
Yes.
In the questions, that is very interesting. Why the human on Madagascar don't like the eye. I think that was very interesting with the finger we will talk about.
In 2015, I went to the American Society of Primatology meeting in Bend, Oregon, and I decided I was presenting several of my students' research as well as my own, and I decided that I would start this organization while presenting that research at this large US meeting, and I've been running the organization since 2015.
Oh, wow.
So it's been 6 years now.
That is a good number.
Yeah.
The first question I would like to ask you about, what is the II Conservation's vision for the work you're doing?
Right. So we have multiple visions. So we want to protect the II is the main goal, is conservation efforts to protect the II, but we also want to educate. Education is one of our main goals in this. It doesn't do any good if we're not helping to educate local people in conservation efforts.
True.
In that, it also helps that we don't judge locals. When I take out students and we are working, a lot of the fatty that we'll talk about later, this judgment or superstition about the II comes through. And a lot of students get very upset that the killing of the IIs occur, and or that people use bushmeat of lemurs. And that kind of Western judgment is very easy to have when you come into Madagascar. But Madagascar is the poorest country on earth. And you have to understand that you have to put that judgment aside for a moment. And you have to recognize that while you want to protect the animals, you also have to recognize that the people have to eat, and that the people are going to utilize whatever they can to feed their families, and that they don't see a distinction between endangered animals and a food source, and that you can educate and try to explain why the lemurs are a critical resource and an endangered animal and all of that. But you have to recognize that the people, the Malagasy, have to eat, and that they're going to utilize whatever they can to feed their families.
Mm.
And you have to have a balance. And if you're going to come in with judgment and anger, it's not going to get you anywhere.
No.
So it has to be a systemic means of coming in to help. You can't come in just to save one lemur or the lemurs. You have to come in to help the people. You have to come in to help food resources for the people. You have to come in to help with education in mind. You have to come in with health care in mind. You have to come in with building materials to help with the villages. You have to come in with all of these goals in mind that help the entire situation, or you're not thinking of the entire situation that goes around why the lemurs are being killed. And that's one of the main goals that II conservation has to take into effect when we meet up. And we can't do all of that ourselves. So we work with other sister organizations that already have boots on the ground so that we can meet with people who have been in place for 10, 15, 20 years and know what's going on. So we work with people who do as crazy of things that sound odd, like kill wild dogs. You wouldn't think that that would be something that needs to be done, or sounds like something that a lemur organization would need to deal with. But wild dogs and wild cats kill a lot of lemurs because they produce rapidly and they're a real danger to all the native animals in Madagascar. And these are all things that we help to raise funds for and aid the Malagasy.
I know there is some animals on Madagascar that is not, what is the word for it on English? Like there is coming outside from the earth, like onto Madagascar and getting like bigger population about. So the wild cats and dogs in the past was not normal on Madagascar.
That's right. They're imported. So they're not native animals. They are imported animals that people have brought in, and they are very harmful to the
ecosystem,
local environment. Yeah,
the environment. Yeah, that is like so many other places like New Zealand, also here in Denmark, there are also animals where we the hunter is going out to hunt the animal because it's just destroying like the whole ecosystem and the environment.
Yeah,
because it's not normal animal that will live there with all the other animals, so they will just like destroying like the balance Mother Earth has created to that path.
absolutely. You see this in Australia. Invasive animals just destroy environments when they get into ecosystems, and it's absolutely true for Madagascar. And it's massively destructive.
Yeah. And to you out there audience, sometimes we need to do that when it's not an animal that is normal out there, as Clayton also sharing about. And here, as you also sharing, Clayton, this like is very important to not judging, like also to take our own kind of mindset, our own eyes away, and to see it with new eyes, and also to see why do we do as we do, and go like into the small details why it is as it is, instead of like judge at the first eye we see on people. Because when we're judging, we're not better at the other person is. Like judging is war, judging is pain, judging is when we make damage on other people. And do we want to be a person that make damage on another one? I will say no to them.
Yeah. No, the damage that can be done when we bring our preconceptions and our judgments just shuts down any communication we can have with Malagasy. And we can't do any conservation efforts in Madagascar without the Malagasy. The Malagasy have to conserve their own island if any kind of thing is going to work. And what is the benefit if we're not having the Malagasy work with us?
We also talk about last time we was have a talk, is like we get to have the people on like in Madagascar to be a part of it, why it is so important to protect II, like, and find the other benefit to choose other things in what you used to choose.
Exactly. So one of the main things that we try to get them to see is that especially the eye can be a tourist boon, that many people really want to see an eye, and it can bring lots of tourism dollars in as people want to come and visit for the lemurs and visit to see the eyes, and that protecting the eyes can actually be very beneficial and bring a lot of money in to Madagascar. So
I think we will talk more about that. So let's dig into the second question. So what is the 3 biggest threats you are facing in the work you're doing on Madagascar?
All right. So the first thing that we really have to deal with is the fatty, the fear. So this religion folklore in Madagascar spells disaster for one of the world's most distinctive primates. The eye is an endangered species of nocturnal lemur, like we talked about, and it's found only on the island of Madagascar, like all lemurs, off the coast of Eastern Africa. Through a combination of unlikely features and the nocturnal secretive lifestyle of the eye have become a fatty to the people of Madagascar, which roughly translates as a taboo. In some regions of Madagascar, the mere sight of the eye is enough to fill locals with the horror and dread, oftentimes leading to the needless slaughter of this particularly peculiar creature. In some regions of Madagascar, it is considered fatty to eat certain lemurs, meaning local taboos can actually shield or protect specific species like the injury. However, eyes appear to only be the only lemur associated with the fatty of prosecution. They get killed. It's not exactly clear how the eye ended up drawing the short straw, but it comes probably from local folklore. While it is challenging to pin down the exact origin of these long-held beliefs, scientists have thought that it's probably from them living under romani trees, which we'll get to, and their particular anatomy. So they have these bat-like ears, which they use for echolocation. And they are the only primate to have these large incumbent incisors. They're continuously growing, which they gnaw through bark with. So they'll use this really long finger that can rotate 360 degrees that they tap on wood. And then they gnaw with these teeth, and they tap and they listen for burrows in insects. And then they gnaw, and then they fish out the grubs. And it acts like a woodpecker in a lot of ways, so that they can percussion hunt for insects. And this unique trait has led to them being very unusual for primates, and they move in a very rapid locomotion style. And at night, this is very scary looking because they'll move very cryptically through the tree areas and decayed wood, listening for insects and larvae hidden beneath. They gnaw holes like rodents and the bark and skewer prey. According to local renditions of the fatty, people are met with ill fortune if an eye points at you with their long finger. The eye's eating habits may also contribute to their unpopularity amongst rural villagers. Eyes have been known to raid Madagascaran crops such as coconuts, lychees, and mangoes. A certain level of distaste for the animal is cultivated simply by their position as a crop pest. But another staple of the eye's diet is the seeds from the romani tree, the canarium. Romani trees grow in the undisturbed areas near tombs. and the Samoanoa region, where it's fatty to cut them down. Naturally, eyes find the sacred burial sites surrounding the forest peaceful. So the burial sites surrounding the forests become an haven. But if you think for the last 1,000 years, eyes have been living near these tombs. People come to bury their dead. This would have been where they first came in contact with eyes. A superstition would have come around eyes being part of the dead, inadvertently causing villagers to physically associate eyes with death and bad luck. A degree of fatty varies greatly village to village, as does the response to sightings. In some northern regions, Madagascar, locals fear all sightings of eyes. If the animal is seen in the forest, locals believe someone in the nearby village will consequently fall ill and possibly die. If an is discovered in the village itself, many believe the only option is to abandon the entire village, or everyone residing there will suffer sickness or death. Other regions only consider the fatty when it enters a village. Locals feel uneasy about an animal intentionally displacing itself from its home in the forest to enter a village. But as we've discussed earlier, spotty forests now from deforestation, of course the animals have to enter villages to get from one part of the forest to another. So essentially the unnatural act of entering a human space from the forest is what creates the bad omen. They believe the only reason an would displace itself in such an unnatural behavior is to foretell illness as a harbinger of death. While the response to an sighting varies wildly, all seem to agree that some action needs to take place in order to culminate in the predictness of sickness or death. Finally, they believe that the total abandonment or killing of the offending has to take place, in which they beat it to death, or they subsequently cut off its tail and hang either the dead or its tail on a pole by the crossroad or outside the village, hoping that to transport the farther away from the village will help protect its residents. Some even believe that the unknowing passerby will carry away the bad luck while traveling with the carcass. Eyes are an important piece of Madagascar's stunning biodiversity. These primates face many challenges, such as habitat loss and persecution as a crop pest, but the damaging fatty accelerates these already declining numbers. So that was the first part. All right, deforestation and human encroachment is definitely the second. The is a nocturnal arboreal animal, meaning it spends most of its time up in the trees. And although it is known to come down to the ground on occasion, it spends most of its time high up in the canopy for protection. It lives up and sleeps most of its time up in a spherical nest up in the trees. And it comes out at dark to begin to hunt for food. But they have a huge range. Can travel up to 2,856 hectares in a night. That is a huge range for a primate. But eyes are severely threatened by deforestation from logging and agricultural plantations. The increasing size of towns and villages are threatening eyes to an extreme. This is causing them to invade crops and enter into human villages, like we were talking about. And they have to try to travel between the last remaining patches of forest. And as we spoke about earlier, they're starting to genetically separate between the north, east, and west. For more information,
third thread you're talking about now?
This is the second.
Okay.
Second.
You have 1 minute.
All right. For more information on that, see Dr. Edward Lewis and George Perry, 2012 and 2013. The third and final is climate change and COVID. Climate change has increased severe cyclones and long droughts. And this year and the last was COVID-19 with catastrophic effects on the island. And being the poorest country, they had to shut down. And the difficulty for aid to Madagascar has been catastrophic. And they still have not received vaccines for COVID-19. And that's where we'll leave off for threats to Madagascar.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So with this three threat you are facing, how do you turn it around to something powerful? You have 1 minute to answer that question.
Okay, with education programs, eye conservation helps to dispel fears about eyes and works to protect the lemurs of Madagascar. It all began with a dream by our partner Susie Lewis to educate and build and strengthen our world. They created the School through Conservation Fusion. Together, we built the first dream school. 75 children have attended class. Today, the little school has blossomed into a center with 175 students, 7 trained teachers, 600 critically endangered radiated tortoises have been saved from poachers, including a number of have also been saved. There's also been the program launched for Girls with No Shoes, a club empowering young girls and women to be a change they wish to be in the world. 7 students from the Dream School qualified for and passed the national exam, which was huge, and they raised $44,000 to build a second school.
How do you turn it around? Like this threat you're facing, people can think about like, how can this be turned around?
We are actively working to instill a sense of urgency around how to protect the environment and how to instill a pride in conservation. These students are going on to help teach and go on to present their research at national conferences in Madagascar. We helped raise money to allow them to present their research at the World Primate Conference. And we also helped to give aid to them for COVID response so that they could combat all of the issues that they were facing during these struggles that they couldn't face themselves without outside aid in Madagascar.
Perfect. So what specific tools do you use in that process to get a success process? You're using education, you are involved, the government, you're involved people that is on Madagascar to show them other benefits. So what are you else doing with the tools to get a solution to success?
We need people on the ground. A few of our friends and people that we work with stayed behind during COVID, and they were able to get medical supplies, masks, water to people during COVID. That was extremely helpful. It was very difficult to get supplies through when the borders were closed during COVID. So it's all a balancing act of who we can work through and with during these processes. And it's always a matter of knowing the right people at the right time for skills of interaction and negotiating. So we're going to talk later about social media, but social media has really been a boon to helping us negotiate and navigate with not only other organizations and people, but also with local Malagasy to try to work with one another and get aid to where it needs to go and to get what needs to be done for conservation efforts.
Perfect. With that knowledge you have right now, what guidance would you give to the audience so they can make a change in their lifestyle?
Conservation can seem overwhelming. So many things seem broken in our world or on the verge of collapse. It's difficult to know where to start. The eye, for instance, only has around 5,000 living individuals left in the world. Most of the native forest is gone in Madagascar. It might seem like there's no hope for eyes or any other lemur for that matter. I like to relate the hawk moth and the Madam-birth lemur that both live in a particular part of the Malagasy forest. And they live off of a particular type of plant, the liana plant. On the liana and no other lives the hawk moth. It feeds by sticking its mouth part into the liana and sucking out the sap. It digests what it wants and excretes the rest as honeydew, a sort of sugary liquid that the Madam-birth lemur loves to eat. The Madam-birth mouse lemur needs the honeydew in its diet and spreads the pollen on to help pollinate the liana plant. Without the complicated interplay of these species, all three would go extinct. They are all symbiotic. Like the Madam-birth lemur, hawk moth, and the liana vine, we need to think of ourselves as symbiotic to the world and the organisms we share it with. We should all seek homeostasis and balance. If we can find ways in our daily life to become more balanced with our environment and be beneficial, it will help each and every one of us with everything around us. There are other wonderful conservation programs I'd like to bring awareness to at this point. So I mentioned Madagascar Biodiversity Partnership. There's also Lemur Love, the Duke Lemur Center, Conservation Fusion, Lemur Conservation Foundation, Lemur Conservation Network, the Mad Dog Initiative, and I also encourage everyone to support their local zoos and museums. They've suffered greatly over the last 2 years during COVID, and they need our support. So those are wonderful organizations that everyone can reach out to. Don't just support II conservation or, one specific organization. Find one that compels you and reach out to it, because there are plenty of organizations out there. They're all doing good work, and be the change that you want to be in the world. There are wonderful ways to do that, and we can all bring ourselves into that homeostasis that a mouse lemur, a moth, and a liana vine can be.
Beautiful. So to the ones out of everything you have shared, so if you should choose one thing the audience should go with to take with them, what will that be?
Oh, I would say spread the word. Spreading the word is the most important thing of anything I've talked about. I would say talk about what you've learned. If you've learned anything about eyes today or lemurs, share it with a friend. Say something, because very few people know about eyes. Eyes are kind of secretive. Very few people know about them. There are some wonderful books out there that have been written about eyes. Pick one up. There are a few zoos out there that have eyes. But all lemurs need help. Almost every lemur is endangered. And if anyone has learned anything or wants to help, that's a great way to get started, is go on social media, go to a friend today and talk about lemurs. Tell them, hey, I learned about this today about lemurs, or I just wanted to tell you, look how cute this lemur is, and just spread a little bit of word about lemurs today. That's a great way to get started. It doesn't take much, doesn't take any money. It just gets the word out, and that little bit of effort, it helps a lot.
Beautiful. So thank you so much, Clayton, for being here together with me. That was amazing to, oh my God, to know about the II and how you start the conservation, what challenge you have faced, how you turn around, what tool you're using, and a beautiful story we also can use in our own life as a human, like the humankind. And to you out there, please share the message, as Clinton's sharing is caring. So please share. They only cost 2 minutes of your time. So please do that. Thank you so much, Clayton, for being here.
Thank you so much, Tanja.
You are most welcome. And have an amazing day out there. Bye, everyone.
Have a wonderful day.